In the early 2000s, U.S. Army Special Operations discovered a troubling paradox. While their recruits aced IQ tests and excelled at abstract reasoning, many struggled in real-world uncertainty. Under pressure, logic-based intelligence cracked. Decision-making faltered, judgment wavered, and destructive habits took hold. The Army wasn't alone in seeing this pattern. Across schools and workplaces, young people were sharper on paper but shakier in life. More anxious, less adaptable, and often unprepared for a messy, unpredictable world. The author offers a bold idea. Intelligence isn't just logic. Long before computers and data, humans survived by drawing on older brain powers: intuition, imagination, emotion, and common sense. These are the four pillars of primal intelligence, the tools that help us spot hidden rules, imagine futures, grow from setbacks, and stay grounded when the path ahead is unclear. Once implemented, Army operatives were reaching new heights both on paper and in the field. That's because at the heart of it all is the story. We think in narratives, not just numbers, and those stories give us the power to navigate chaos, invent strategies, and lead others forward. Primal Intelligence is the guide to unlocking all of those ancient strengths. Every story of human intelligence begins with a spark, a moment when we notice something unusual that others might miss. This primal spark is intuition. It's the brain's ability to spot exceptions, the odd detail that doesn't quite fit, and to recognize that buried in that anomaly might be a new rule. Computers, with all their calculating power, run on averages and trends. They're brilliant at what's typical, but they struggle with the irregular. Humans, on the other hand, thrive on irregularity. Intuition is how we turn the unexpected into possibility. When Vincent van Gogh was experimenting with colors, he was haunted by a peculiar red-cyan clash. The traditional color wheel said that this combination wasn't supposed to work. But instead of dismissing it as a mistake, he leaned into it, producing paintings that transfix the eye and pulse with emotion. Or consider Marie Curie, who noticed a peculiar radiation in pitchblende that other scientists overlooked and dismissed. That curiosity led her to uncover radium and polonium, discoveries that reshaped science. Or it's like the hockey player Wayne Gretzky, often celebrated as a natural genius. His secret wasn't to skate harder than the rest. He was skating where the puck wasn't yet. He knew to read the exceptions and trust his hunch. Intuition thrives on exceptions to rules. Unlike logic, which demands clean data sets and tidy patterns, intuition finds power in the stray observation. Children display it all the time. They notice when something feels off, even if they can't articulate why. Adults often smother it under layers of rationality or social conditioning. But the truth is, intuition is our most primal detector. It tells us when the world isn't matching the template, and it urges us to ask, why is this different? What might it mean? As the first pillar of primal intelligence, intuition reminds us that wisdom doesn't always come from more information. It comes from paying attention and noticing the odd, the strange, the exceptional, and wondering if it matters. That curiosity sets up the next step. Once you've spotted an exception, you need a way to stretch it, to imagine where it could lead. And that's where imagination comes in. If intuition is the spark, imagination is the fuel. It takes that odd exception, the peculiar color, the strange play, the unexpected opportunity, and expands it into possible futures. Think of imagination as the brain's branching engine, a neural forest where what-ifs grow in all directions. Where computers see one probable outcome, imagination lets us spin dozens of possible storylines. This power is ancient, born from the brain's tree-like networks that let our minds chase paths forward, loop back, and find intersections that form brand new plans. Artists like Beethoven captured this beautifully. He could take one simple motif and, by branching and bending it, create an entire symphony that felt both surprising and inevitable. Imagination also allowed the physicist Robert Goddard to read science fiction and picture rockets that might actually take someone to Mars. They weren't just building on prior data, they were leaping beyond precedent, guided by vision. Imagination is what allows us to invent, not just improve. But imagination isn't only for visionaries and geniuses. It's something we all use every day. It's what allows us to make plans. And what is a plan but another story, a narrative that follows a clean path from A to B? Imagination makes our plans more resilient. When faced with a roadblock or tough decision, our minds run quick simulations. If I do this, then what? And if I try that instead? These little scenarios are our personal branches. The stronger and more flexible our imagination, the better we are at adapting. This is why the U.S. Army Special Operations trains recruits to focus on now plus one. Don't look 20 moves down the line. That leads to paralysis. Just imagine the very next step and the one after. It's imagination tuned for action. Of course, imagination has risks. It can run wild, spinning out anxieties or fantasies that paralyze us. This is a sign that our plans are going off track. That's why every plan needs to be grounded by purpose. A single goal, like Goddard's dream of sending a rocket to Mars, can align the branches, keeping imagination bold but directed. The best strategies arise from this combination: broad possibilities, anchored by a clear vision. So imagination builds on intuition. You notice the exception, then you imagine where it could lead. But spotting and spinning ideas isn't enough. You also need a way to decide which possibilities to chase and how to stick with them when life gets tough. That's where emotion comes into play. If intuition lights the spark and imagination fans the flame, emotion is the dashboard that tells us how the fire is burning. Emotions aren't fluffy extras, they're feedback systems, guiding us as we navigate uncertainty. Fear warns us when we have no plan. Anger tells us when we're stuck with only one plan. These are all important emotions to pay attention to, and to not just try to tamp down. When you spend too much time trying to quiet your emotions, you can end up in an unhelpful state of dissociation. Rather, recognize anxiety for what it is saying, which is that something may be wrong about the future of your plan. Likewise, grief and shame are signals that our personal story has fractured, when our past feels broken and isn't connecting properly to our current place in the narrative. Each emotion is an important sign telling us what is in need of repair. For the special operators, emotion is also momentum. Too little and you stall. Too much and you lose control. The trick is balance. Enough emotional charge to keep you moving, but not so much that you're reckless. Think of a soldier after trauma. Resilience doesn't mean ignoring fear or grief. It means using those signals to recalibrate, to find a first step forward. One Army pilot puts it, "You don't have to cling to the failed plan, you just need to keep planning." Optimism helps in this regard. Optimism isn't telling yourself that everything will work out. It's thinking everything can work out. When things go wrong, our brains often replay the failures. But by mining our personal history for moments of success, even small ones, we can rekindle hope. These positive plot twists remind us that setbacks aren't the end of the story. They're turning points. Emotion, used wisely, fuels resilience. Emotion also connects us to others. A stirring speech, a moving painting, a moment of shared laughter, all of these are emotional cues that signal belonging. Humans are storytelling animals, and stories work because they trigger emotion. They remind us of what matters, what's worth fighting for, what feels true. With intuition, imagination, and emotion, we've now got the tools to spot anomalies, build possibilities, and fuel ourselves with purpose. But how do we know when to stay the course and when to pivot? How do we decide when to trust the plan and when to ditch it? Well, let's hear what common sense, the fourth pillar, has to say. Common sense often gets dismissed as obvious or not worth considering, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It's the unique human power to know when we don't know. Children display it all the time, hesitating in a new house or before a stranger. They sense novelty and pause. Computers, by contrast, never know what they don't know. They treat every query as certain and fill gaps with confident hallucinations. Humans, guided by story, can detect unknown unknowns. Common sense works by tracking volatility. When the world feels stable, common sense relaxes, letting us rely on tried and true habits. When volatility spikes, it raises the alarm. Something's new, the old rules might not apply here. That nudge prompts imagination to draft fresh plans, or in urgent cases, to pivot fast. In other words, common sense is the brain's doubt switch, and doubt, used wisely, makes us more agile. There's a duality to common sense that Benjamin Franklin captured in his aphorisms. One is, be slow in choosing a friend, slower in changing, But also, you may delay, but time will not, and the way to be safe is never to be secure. It's contradictory on paper, but perfectly human in practice. Slow down and be cautious when tradition is working. Be quick when change arrives. Let's look at how the four pillars work together for the special operatives. A plan forms with a clear vision, but has broad possibilities in case unknown unknowns arrive. Anxiety is not something to be eliminated, but rather is used as a diagnostic tool. Too little, and they miss threats. Too much, and they freeze. So the operators train recruits to tune anxiety by separating past worries from future ones. They're taught to update their standard operating procedures with lessons from past mistakes and then let go. Focus your vigilance on the now plus one, the next actionable step. That's common sense in motion, grounded in history, alert to novelty, tuned to act. With common sense, the four pillars of primal intelligence come together. Intuition sparks, imagination branches, emotion fuels, and common sense directs. Together, they generate human decision-making that thrives in uncertainty. But theory only matters if it can be applied. So in the next couple of sections, we'll be looking at how these powers shine when it comes to coaching and leadership. Coaching in primal intelligence isn't about micromanaging or shielding rookies from mistakes. It's about unleashing them. Just as special ops pilots hand over the controls mid-mission, Hollywood showrunners let junior writers run an episode to the brink of collapse. This isn't just trial by fire. By letting rookies fly, experts and mentors learn too, because they're pushed into uncharted territory. When coaches step in to rescue, they discover new error chains and invent new solutions in real time. The rookie grows, and so does the veteran. This counterintuitive approach relies on the neuron's branching shape. Just as imagination forks possibilities forward and back, letting rookies create messes forces experts to branch in new directions. It keeps expertise alive, preventing the stagnation known as the paradox of expertise, knowing so much you stop learning. Coaching, then, is as much about empowering novices as it is about reigniting experts. So what then does primal leadership look like? It doesn't look like management. Management, whether labeled authoritative, participative, or transformational, is about control. Leadership, on the other hand, is about vision. Leaders step into the unknown first, showing the way by example. They're imaginative, resilient learners, decisive pivoters, communicators, and coaches. They combine all the primal powers into action. But strong leadership also embodies what the philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson called nonconformity, the courage to trust your inner compass when the crowd shouts otherwise. For the operators, it's vision married to bold action. Don't be cautious. Dash toward the tomorrow that fits your story. And if it breaks, pivot. That's leadership in the primal sense, not managing, but running free, guided by purpose and intuition. From coaching rookies to leading teams, the application of primal intelligence changes how we grow, guide, and act. But why is this power uniquely human? To answer that, let's finish up with a quick dive into the science behind it all. When we boil it all down, what makes human beings special, and what makes our brains so much smarter than artificial intelligence, can be summed up in 4 letters: MOTO. MOTO is short for motor intelligence. It's the engine that gets the brain to think in actions, like A to B, rather than just equations, like A equals B. Logic, rooted in vision, gave us computers. Moto, rooted in movement, gave us creativity. It's how animals dodged predators by anticipating their intent. It's how humans invent strategies, stories, and technologies. Computers can simulate action, like flipbook horses galloping across a screen, but they can't perceive or generate true cause and effect. They're locked in correlations, not narratives. Humans, through Moto, can imagine chains of action that don't yet exist, inventing futures with no precedent. That's the mechanical basis of story, the sequence of events that makes sense of time. Story thinking, in other words, is what makes us human. It explains not just consciousness, but self-consciousness, our ability to see ourselves as part of a continuing narrative. It's why Shakespeare, with his eye for exceptions and his gift for story, has inspired innovators throughout history, from Vincent van Gogh and Einstein to Nikola Tesla and Steve Jobs. And it's why special ops found primal intelligence so useful. Story thinking trains the brain to plan, adapt, and lead in chaos. The power of Shakespeare shouldn't be understated. There's a reason Albert Einstein cited Shakespeare as a model for modern science. More than a playwright, he was a planner. His stories passed down a method for innovative thinking and creating new options. That method, rooted in motto and story, is what Primal Intelligence aims to restore. So here's your challenge. Can you reject the myth that optimization and data will carry us into the future? Can you remember that we already possess a brain wired for innovation, resilience, and leadership? By reawakening intuition, imagination, emotion, and common sense, and by grounding them in story, we can see possibilities faster, adapt to change smarter, and create futures worth living. That's the power of primal intelligence.